This morning we're talking with LaDon D. VanNoy, who was a missionary in Japan many years ago. He has something very important to tell us about a visit he made to northern Japan in about the year 1959. But before we get into that, he wanted to tell you about a visit he had with Dr. Sperry.
Which was after my mission, of course. When I returned, I was here at BYU, but with the help of Sister Katsuda and so forth, we were able to record and write out the experience that we had in Japan about these ancient records. Anyway, so with the report that we had written out and the photographs, I took them to Dr. Sperry at the Department of Religion here at BYU. Dr. Sperry was 70, I believe, and so we had a very good interview, about an hour's worth and so forth, in which I presented it to him, and he kind of read through it, and he said, well, it's just, let's let this lay.
What was the summary or gist of your report about?
The report was about some evidence that we had found that Christ had visited Japan, had chosen 12 disciples, and that there was records of those people going way back, probably as far back as 500 AD. And so this is what we found very intriguing.
Now, 500 AD was long after Jesus Christ was resurrected.
Yes, but it's I say that because probably it was prior to 500 AD, because 500 AD was when the Chinese language was adapted into Japan for the purpose of being able to write it, and so the records that we found were written in a language that was before the use of Chinese characters.
So are you saying that Christ visited Japan like he did the Americas?
Yes, I am saying that. And I think the scriptures prove that, and particularly the other record I want to talk about. He visited here, us, the Nephites, Lamanites, 5 different times. So I think he has visited many times, maybe even in our present day.
When Dr. Sperry finished interviewing you, how did you feel about what you had done in Japan, and how did he end it? End your interview?
Well, it's been something very dear to me, an experience. It's not something I pursued because my life has been architecture and so forth. So I was concerned what to do with it. And so when I gave it to him, he was very intrigued to hear it. But like I said before, there are many archives and things that tell us that the Book of Mormon is true.
So he didn't discourage you from reporting it, but he did say to hold it dear?
Yes, hold it and wait for the Lord to tell you.
And you went on an expedition to the northern part of Japan with a number of individuals.
Yeah, that was Brother Otsuka, our Brother Watabe, Brother Otsuka, Darrell Longzine, and myself. Just the 4 of us.
When you got there, you had a singular experience you're going to tell us about later.
Yeah.
But are any of the others that you went with still alive today?
No, I'm the last one.
You're the last survivor of that eyewitness experience.
Correct.
Of those that went with you, will there be surviving sons and daughters that will testify that their fathers saw this thing?
Brother Watabe's family and sons, so forth. One of his sons here teaches here at BYU at the MTC, teaches the language and so forth, and he knows pretty much about this thing because his father talked to him about it. One other son is serving in Japan as a mission president, and I don't know the others, but at any rate, yes, they do know.
And Dr. Sperry said you'll know at a point when to bring it out. And now is the time?
Now I feel is the time for me, you know. And I'm the last one, so if I don't get it out, nobody's going to know that it ever really happened.
Okay. That's enough for us to kind of build a video to kind of tease the idea of why you're coming out. So now maybe we ought to go over your outline again. You're going to tell a little bit about your biographical information. Then you're going to tell about the story itself,
yes,
and what led up to that.
Yes.
Which includes your visit of the man, the old house in Sendai.
Yeah.
The man with the picture, and then you're going to talk about Brother Watabe. You're going to introduce him into the story.
Oh yes.
And we'll have his son do a video on that.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can have his son talk about the conversion of his father, his background, his amazing life that he led, full of faith.
Yeah.
In fact, the man, Brother Watabe, was a very good-looking man. He could have been a Japanese Hollywood, star, right?
Yeah.
He's probably very charismatic.
Very charismatic. Yeah.
And
open and loving everybody.
Open and loving.
Yeah.
And then you're going to talk about the newspaper article that Brother Watabe and President Andrus of the Northern Far East Mission discussed.
Yes.
Which brought
yes.
you into the picture somehow because you'd already met with the fellow up in Japan, up in Sendai.
Yeah.
So you were able to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And by the way, did the fellow up in Sendai accompany you?
No.
But he had given you the clues about where to look.
He
right?
gave me the clue of something that was thereafter a great big question in my mind. And I didn't know how he knew the things that he knew until 2 years later when we made this trip.
Okay. But you didn't take him with you.
No.
Okay, and then after you get done with introducing Brother Watabe, and then you're on your way to Geidai University in Japan, a prestigious university, and then you're going to tell how you whose idea was it? Was it Brother Watabe's or yours to go do this?
Well, it was Brother Watabe and President Andrus too, as far as that's concerned, because of the newspaper article, Asahi Shimbun.
How did they connect you into that?
Well, I'm just around.
You're going to Geidai.
I'm Geidai, and I'm just.
You're there in the office?
No, I'm just bouncing in and out, saying hi.
And you're saying, goodbye. Hey, by the way, I know about that. Or had you already discussed it with Brother Watabe?
No, we had never discussed it. Well, of course, it was in the Seita no Michi. So it was out to the missionaries that this thing happened, or this article was out. Rather, it was rather weirdly written, and so forth. So there was that small, very small clue, I talked to Brother Watabe about it at the mission home when I visited, and that's where it all came about.
And then, now, who was the main organizer? Was it you?
Yes, myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you got all the resources together, and you made this long trip, and then you had the interview with the priests. So, and then after your interview with the priest, which is the heart of the story, really.
Yeah.
Then what would you say after your interview with the priest? Would there be anything? You'd come back and you'd bring you'd go back to Geidai, then you'd go back to BYU, and then you would talk to Elder Sperry.
Well, Frankly, I think before we really get into the trip that we made, we have to go back into the culture, the ancient culture of Japan, and particularly the temple at
Okay.
Isashima.
By the way, did the priest tie Israel into the temples? Did he know about that?
He knew about the temple, yes. Oh, yes, very definitely.
Okay.
And the basic culture of old Japan, being uh, basically uh, connected to Judaism, you know.
Okay. So this priest not only connected his
Mhm.
village to Christ, but he connected himself to Hebrew culture.
Yes.
Oh, that's very important.
Yeah.
That's very
Well,
important.
what we're seeing is that east meets west. You know.
Okay. So we have the visit. You're going to connect old Japan to Hebrew.
Right.
And then what are you going to talk about?
Okay, and then when we get through with that, the couple of little things that I've brought out, and then there are hundreds, and I want to say that Arimasu Kubo, a Jewish priest, has researched these things, and there are hundreds of things that connect the Japanese culture up with ancient Judaism. But at this point, I want to break away and come back with Brother Watabe, and we're going to go to Aomori-ken and visit with the priest
So,
Takinouchi Sensei.
so you're going to bring in old Japan before you talk about the visit.
Correct.
Because you already, going up to the visit, you'd already known about the old Japan connection.
Correct. Yes, very
and
much. Yeah.
And that's Brother Watabe's work.
Yeah.
He was very much into that.
Yeah. Well, I was very much into studying, particularly Shinto, because of my architectural thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I show the slides on that.
All right. After you're done with the priest visit, you've already done the old Japan connection. The priest is going to tie in what he knows about the connection and what he knows about Christ. And that's a pretty important part of this. And
Yeah.
then what do you do after that?
Okay. When we arrived, Brother Watabe went up looking for someone that knew about this particular intriguing idea, and so when he came back, he got us out of the car, and we went up to a little small house, and was invited in. It was a place where obviously small group had met, maybe as many as 15 people or so, and there was a couple other people that met us there besides Takinouchi. Takinouchi was about 90 years old, esteemed as their leader. I don't know what to call him, sensei, whatever. Anyway, they invited us in.
Was not a Shinto priest?
No, he was not a Shinto priest.
What would you say was sensei of a small group?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You know, knowing what kind of how they hung together and what they believed, you could almost say he was like a prophet.
Okay. So he was a spokesman. How big would you say the group was?
We only saw about 6 or 7 or 8, but out of the community, gee, I don't know.
Kakare Kristen was the story of, Brother Watabe, Professor Watabe told us about.
Yeah.
The hidden away Christians, which doesn't, it doesn't mean anything more or less than that's the way the Japanese regard people that stay hidden, that hold Christian values in Japan, especially during a time when it was outlawed. Did you get any sense that they were one of those groups?
Oh yes, very definitely. Just to a thought about that. See, the Catholicism was introduced into Japan, and they kind of took over and tried to take over the government and everything else. and it ended up in a revolution of sorts, and over 200,000 people were killed. And so from thereafter, Christianity was absolutely abandoned.
Okay. So this group in northern Japan that you met the leader of may have been influenced by that culture at some point long after Christ had come.
Correct.
Okay. And
So
you believe that's probably true.
Very true.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about, so you're going to talk about that group, you're going to talk about your visit and how important that was, and then you're going to do what? What's your next?
All right. I want to take this down and discuss the several things. There's not that many, actually. The genealogy sheet that was there, and I have those, and the things that were in the tokonoma. A picture of Christ. I don't have a picture of that, but he had a Star of David on his chest, besides the 16-point star behind his head that was the imperial crest of the Emperor of Japan, but also was the crest symbol of Solomon in Solomon's temple, and it was also on Herod's gate. But the 16-point star had found its way to Japan as well. So there was that. And then we sat around talking for a while and so forth. And then Brother Takenouchi kind of got nervous, and he got up and walked around a bit.
I think we got to save that for a minute later.
Okay. Yep.
What I'd like to do is just get about 10,000 feet up. And after you talk about that visit, are you going to take us into the Sperry? Are you going to tie back to the Sperry, or are you going to go into something else?
I'm going to go into something else.
Okay.
It is at this point I want to say that they say that Christ landed on the seashore of Japan at Hachinoda, and I don't believe that it was Christ. I believe that it was disciples and followers. But now I want to talk about something that is my opinion about that landing of that boat. So I want to go back to the Book of Mormon, and you remember that Hagoth was swept away at sea.
Okay, now, who brought up the seashore part of it?
It's in part of their claim that they.
This is the Takenouchi claim.
Takenouchi, yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so he had that information.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And that's when you're going to go into this other part of this. Okay.
Right. Correct. And so I want to talk now about Hagoth. But the other record that I want to tell you about, Hagoth, the son of Hagoth particularly, was the one that was swept out to sea. The other part, his father, Hagoth, took his people, and they were making boats, and you will read that in Helaman, the latter part of Mosiah, and Helaman 2 and 3, that they had boats and they were using them and so forth. Anyway, he went on up the Gulf, we would call the Gulf of California, to where they found fresh water. But Hagoth, the son of Hagoth, was swept out to sea, and they didn't know of him. But anyway, he came back and found his people 2 years later, 2 or so years later, and then he left again. Now, the opinion that I have.
Well, let's give that opinion in the real thing here.
Yeah.
So you're going to tie in Takenouchi's group to Hagoth, and then you're going to tell about Hagoth.
Yeah.
Right. Now, at this point, we have other people on the panel that are going to talk about these things, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you want Cloud Piler or Alan Richards to tell that part of the story?
Or Keith Barbin.
or Keith Barban?
Yes, any one of those.
Okay. Do you kind of want to fade back at that point, let them talk about, because you brought them to the point of, wow, Christ was in Japan, and the small group, the Takenouchi group, had other information about Christ on the seashore, which ties in with the Haygoth story. And then you're going to do what?
Okay, now I'm going to say that if you look at the ocean currents of the northern Pacific, which all run clockwise, and you look at this chart here, and you will see that the charts that the sea current and so forth carries them pretty much in a course that they could have went from what we know as the Gulf of California to the place where they landed in Japan. It all runs not only the ocean currents but also the wind. Now I have a opinion about the boat that they had. The boat that Lehi and the party that Nephi built was not a deep-keeled, heavy ballasted boat that plunges through the waves, but it was one that goes up over the waves, much like this one, in similitude of this. And I can say this because I have had a boat that has shallow draft, actually had 42 inches of shallow draft, and I've seen the how that works. So I feel that was the kind of boat that they
now
went across.
The Polynesian people have legends, stories, history about these light boats that go on the waves, and their commerce between the islands, right?
Correct.
And they knew the currents, and they knew how to navigate, and they were skilled at it.
Yeah.
Long before the white man, Caucasian, got there, right?
Correct.
They were good at it.
Yeah.
So.
And my feeling is that was the boat that the Lord gave to Nephi, the design, and that's the boat that Haygoth went across the Pacific.
So when we see him on an English brig with a big steering wheel, that's baloney.
That's baloney. Okay. That's baloney.
All right. Well,
so I think that Haygoth was pretty much responsible for all of the navigation of Polynesia.
Okay. So now we've got Haygoth in the picture, and Haygoth connects Christ also.
Correct.
Okay. And these are subsequent visits after his resurrection.
After he made after he was swept to sea, he came back 2 years later, and then he left again.
Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think? Why wouldn't it just been his one visit after when Haygoth was around? Do you think he also visited after his resurrection? I mean, this is kind of.
Oh yes, very definitely.
Okay, after his resurrection, and then later on as well.
Just like he did in the Book of Mormon. Yes.
So you have his resurrection, you have the Book of Mormon corollary, where you have the destruction of the temple, you have the earthquake, you have the darkness, and then you have the salvation of them with Christ visiting and giving them the teachings and choosing 12 disciples. So there is a tie into 12 disciples in Japan?
Yes,
okay.
There is. Yeah.
And then there's also a tie into Haygoth later?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a very interesting point. So that Haygoth story could get very long, right?
Yeah. Well, it could. Yes, I'll try to make it short, but at any rate, I do want to put that in because this is going to raise some a bit of concern as to where the Polynesians come from.
Okay. And concern why? I mean, why wouldn't they be joyful to know?
Well, yeah, they should, but there are so many theories or ideas about where the Polynesians come from that probably won't agree with what I just said.
Now, you don't have any experience with Polynesia, do you?
Well, this boat that I have right there, I've had for 25 years in Hawaii. Yes.
Oh, okay. So you knew some of the Polynesian people.
Yes, I do.
And have you ever run your ideas by them?
No, no.
Okay.
This is fairly recent. Just as this record has come out, have I learned these things.
Okay. And so there's a tie-in to your timing of why you wanted to come out with this Japanese story and this Polynesian connection.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, are you going to talk about the interesting Utah connection
Okay.
to this?
Then, just kind of separately, differently, there is Moroni. And Moroni, there is a plaque or a plaque on a painting, I understand, maybe even a statue. I'm not, I've got to verify this. Anyway, of that Moroni had dedicated the land upon which the Manti temple sits. Well, this record I'm going to tell you about, Moroni had received the plates of ether and was asked of the Lord to deposit them in Cumorah. I believe that with the records of ether, there was also the Urim and Thummim, and Moroni deposited them with the golden plates, and then he wrote quite a bit of stuff himself, and he rather said that he probably would not make it back or anything. But he, according to this record, he did make it back. He married and had 5 children and lived to be somewhere around 120 years old. Now,
this is Moroni himself.
Moroni himself.
And did he know Hagoth?
No, oh no. Hagoth was, well, it's
Was
possible.
Was his did he know the people of Polynesia?
No.
Did he? How then does he tie into the people of Polynesia and Japan?
Well, he's a Nephite, Lamanite, whatever part of the Native American people.
Okay, so did they have connection? I mean, was there commerce going on between Manti and Japan somehow?
Oh, not that I know of, not that I've read anything about. This record I'm going to bring up right now is the next 800 years after the Book of Mormon. But I don't think it goes to where they had commerce, because the end of these people, the latter part of these people, their culture fell apart. They became a very brutal, tribal sort of people.
Perhaps ancestors of the Paiute Indians?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they had a civilization there near the Manti Temple?
Yes.
But how do you tie in the Paiute ancestors to Hagoth and to Japan?
Well, okay. There is a story that we all have heard, or that we've heard, or I heard it 20 some odd years ago, about the tall hats. When the Mormons came into the valley, the Indians had already had visions and dreams and so forth of these people, and they could be trusted. And the introduction to this record, and they are called the Mantina Archives. The introduction to that, to the Mantina Archives, tell about the tall hats. And they, when the Indians, and as it just says, the Mormons came, and there would be, you could trust them. There would be a complete conquest of the region. After converting to the new religion, the chiefs, that is of the Indians, the American Indians, met with Brigham Young to give into his keeping a copy of the libraries that were hidden in the hills of the Wasatch Front. They were pleased that the men of prophecy had come, because this meant that they could leave the valley and return to where their family had originally come from. President Young informed them, however, that they would have to remain but a little while longer. His words to them was that, "For we have no wherewith to translate these records." This was repeated again many years later with President David O. McKay. He said the same thing, and shortly after that, the records were sealed up and covered up, and no one was allowed to visit them. But that record has now come forth and is known as the Mentina Archives.
I wonder if we ought to get Cloud Tyler on.
Yes, that would be a good idea. Okay, then I want to talk about a guy by the name of Isaac Morley.
Okay.
You want me to go on?
I don't have. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Isaac Morley, by the record of his nephew, Carrie and Lisa Borland, was an attendant as Joseph Smith went back to Washington to readdress the persecution of the saints. And then Isaac Morley was an attendant to Brigham Young when he arrived in the valley of the Salt Lake Valley. He was kind of a background sort of guy and very helpful in establishing government in the Utah Territory. Brigham Young called him to be a mentor and to help and to certify the settlers, pioneers, as they went south into the other places like Manti and so forth. But he was also called to work with the Indians that we just talked about. They were the Ute or the Paiute, and in his time, Isaac Morley was shown these records several times. He was very close with Chief Walker, and the records that he saw were quite small, written on metal, and they were copied. They were encapsulated in pitch, pine gum, and they were secreted away. And then when the Native Americans couldn't get anyone to help from the church, they rounded up some people that were familiar with at least the clues to translate this language, and they did, and that is what we have as the Mentina Archives. And they're very intriguing, and they are totally a testimony that the Book of Mormon is true, and nothing in them that we have found is contrary to what it says in the Book of Mormon. Now, the very last thing I want to say before turning to somebody else, I said, I believe that the engraved stones are, if and when the stones in Japan are translated, and I don't know that that'll be by the Urim and Thummim, of course. I don't think they all will. But when they are translated, the Japanese are very keen on the genealogy. Matthew Cowley, when he opened the land of Japan, or Heber J. Grant, when he was the first mission president, one of them said that there would be a day when the land of Japan would be dotted by temples, and the genealogy that is available in Japan, or will be available, will surely make that true. Okay?
I'm trying to get a hold of Cloud pilot.
Yep.
Hope we get him. Do we have a number for Alan Richards?
Yeah.
There you go.
Eight oh one
Okay. 801
473
473
3094.
3094. Hello, is this Mr. Richards, Alan? This is Jonathan Feld from KHQN Radio. I have LaDon VanNoy with me in the studio now. We were going over the fireside summary that he wanted to talk about. Your name came up in conjunction to a record he calls the Mentina Archive. The Menenha. Do you have a few minutes for an interview over the air even this morning, just to talk about some of the things he wants to talk about in the fireside coming up? Just for you to know about the book and he talks about how it affects crisis. I wondered if you could just do it on the phone right now. Oh, okay. And I appreciate that. I know how that's. No, we're not. We will be. Well, no, we're going to dice and splice, and Sunday's kind of a free form day. But I wonder if I can just interview you and LaDon for just a few minutes over the air, even to kind of tease this thing and get people interested in it. Let me see here. So we'll be on the air in, tell you, 10 minutes, 55 seconds. Okay. He is right here. We have him home. Okay, hang on just a minute.
Yeah. Hi, Alan. We're doing fine. Trying to get this thing organized and put together, and so forth. And there's some things that I wanted to tell you about as far as the Christ visit to Japan, because I'm sure you're not really totally familiar with all of that, but I've kind of connected some of that up, and it connects back to the Mentina, particularly to Angela, So yeah. 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 Well, yeah, and that's what I'm going to do. But I'm also tying the landing. They said that Christ landed in Japan on a boat. Well, I know Christ didn't land on a boat, but I know that the disciples did. And they have said that they landed at a place called Hachidate. But when I look at the ocean currents and my experience with the ocean, and you know that I had a boat and so forth, and when I look at Hagoth, and particularly the son of Hagoth, and he was swept out to sea, and he was gone for a couple of years or whatever, and he came back and found his people, and he left again. And that's what I understand, or what I remember from. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, I didn't want to really get into too awfully much detail. I just want to connect it up that according to the ocean currents and the ocean winds, it's very likely that someone, not particularly Hagoth, but someone uh, who is a follower of Christ and so forth, who knew about it, landed in Japan and taught them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I get, but I don't want to get really into too much detail because there is so much to bring out, so, and yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so before we really do this, and we might be putting it off for a little while, a little
1 month, right?
Yeah,
We're gonna do a
conference weekend.
Mhm.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
No?
it's a good day.
Is that a good time?
That's a good day.
Yeah,
People are off.
people are off. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we need to get together and we'll, talk about that. Uh, actually, yeah, okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, we're trying to get also in touch. Uh, Jonathan called Cloud Fiber, but they had gotten hit with rains and flooding and everything else, so they weren't really able to talk. So we're trying to get back to him too, So that yeah, yeah. Oh, well, it's fantastic and it's wonderful, and I've meant to get you and, well, Keith Barvin and and others together and so forth, you know, so we can talk about these things in detail. But, you know, for this presentation, well, yes, because you did it.
Solo sognare orizzonte mancano le parole. Sì, lo so che non c'è luce in una stanza quando manca il sole. Se non ci sei, tu con me. Sulle finestre mostra tutti il mio cuore che ha acceso. Chiudi dentro me la luce che hai incontrato per strada. Time to say goodbye. Paresi che non vorrai, vedo qui vissuto con te. Adesso sì vivo con te. Partirò su navi per mare.
No, Keith Marvin is another person. You have met him, I remember. But Jonathan is here.
We're live in 5 minutes.
Okay, we're on in 5 minutes, he says. So we're just actually trying to get a preview of you know, things. So it has nothing to do with the final thing at all. So he wants to ask you some questions. Then you do that interview that way. Yeah, I'm doing just another couple of minutes here because he wants to.
Okay, we're on in 4 minutes, 17 seconds. I'm going to put you, we're going to go talk to you from the microphones, okay? And we'll be on at 9:32. That's KHQN 1480 AM. Let me get. That's right over the celestial radio, right above you. So, let me. You're in Payson? Yeah, you'll be able to hear us just fine. Okay, here we go. Don't have it on while you're talking, though. Okay. I'm going to put you on the microphones over there. Go over there and sit down and speak to him. Let's see if we can hear it. Okay, I'm going to put you on here.
All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
I'm hearing the echo, so it's working.
Speak right into the mic.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you just
Okay, you get me. Okay, that's good. So we're connected up.
How well can you hear him?
It's a little
muffled.
Little muffled to me. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and speak, Mr. Richards.
Yeah. Keep talking, Alan.
All right, I just turning off my.
Oh, there. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Much better.
The fan is stopped. I don't think there's anything else making noise here.
Yeah. Alan, you're working nights now or something, aren't you?
Yeah, I work graves.
Yeah. When are you?
Not the same kind of graves I did in Missouri. I used to bury people in Missouri. It's not the same kind.
Yeah. Now
you'll hear the music come on, LaDon, and then we'll be on. Okay, and I'll introduce you. So.
Okay. Here we go.
But it'll be still. We're still 3 minutes away, 2.5 minutes away.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was asking you, Alan, you know, I want to call you again, but I don't want to call you when you're sleeping all the time, you know.
Oh, LaDon, you're welcome to call me anytime you want to call me.
Well,
take your drink of water now.
You and Bill have that permission. Not very many people have that.
Well, I know, but you got to get your rest too, you know.
Yeah. Well, you do what you have to do.
Is Cindy still teaching, or what's she doing?
Cindy's actually she's at church right now. If that's what you're asking, she's in the primary presidency.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
She's actually at church right now, and she's in the primary presidency. So
she's in the primary presidency.
Yeah, my
Okay.
wife. Yeah.
I wonder, maybe I need to get you some headphones, LaDon.
Okay.
Yeah, you might want to get headphones let on if you can get them.
My hearing is going. Yeah. So.
What? Confusing.
Yeah. I guess it comes with age. I don't know, but I'm having trouble with it. Yeah. But no, what I was asking is she, is she working these days, or what's she doing?
Oh no, she's at home.
Oh, she's at home. Okay, with the kids, and you were doing homeschooling and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's still happening, huh? Oh, that's
yeah,
good.
we only have one kid at home now, so I mean at homeschool. So
Yeah.
are adults and on with their own lives. Kind of wild being this time of life. Anyway.
Yeah, well,
How's your wife doing, LaDon?
she's doing fine. She's doing fine.
Yeah.
Of course, putting up with me,
Ah! Well, you're worth putting up with. You're smart to keep you around.
Okay?
Yeah, I can hear fine. Great, that's wonderful. Yeah, I just.
Quando sono solo sognare orizzonte e mancano le parole. Sì, lo so che non c'è luce in una stanza quando manca il sole.
Good morning, Utah County. This is a special broadcast coming straight from Provo, Utah's Rock Canyon studio. We have in studio with us a missionary from Japan from the 1950s. His name is LaDon LaDon D. VanNoy. And on the phone we have Brother Alan Richards from the Payson area. Alan, can you hear us today?
I sure can.
Thank you very much for joining us. We're privileged to have you with us, and there's a special reason for us to even broadcast this morning. We're going to promote a fireside that we'll have here at Rock Canyon Studio on conference weekend this upcoming October, and it will be about a visit of Jesus Christ to Japan, much like we know the story from the Book of Mormon. That is very important to us, and so we're going to be promoting that this morning with a little bit of information. And to go quickly backward, LaDon, you were telling me about your mission to Japan, and about when was that in your life?
I was called 1956. I just turned 21 years old, and
A little closer to the mic.
okay, there we go. And so I was called for a three-year mission, and I actually stayed in Japan for 3 years, 8 months. When my mission was over, I was released in Japan, and I went to Geidai University, Tokyo Arts University, very prestigious school, and I went there to study architecture, and I was studying under number 3 most famous in Japan, Junzo Yoshimura. And so it was while that I was going to school that connecting back up with my mission president and Brother Watabe, that I come across, there was an article in the paper, Asahi Shimbun, that was very curious about Christ having visited Japan. And, well, that's kind of different. So there were interest. President Andrews was interested in that, and Brother Watabe also wanted to know it. And he's a very linguist type individual. He knew Chinese. He was born and raised in China of Japanese parents, so he spoke Japanese as well. And then he went to school in Russia, so he knew Russian very well. He became a diplomat for the Japanese government, and eventually had to come home, and he taught himself English, and eventually worked for the U.S. military for a short time until he was called by President Andrews to come to the mission home to translate the Book of Mormon into Japanese. All during my mission and the years before me, we never ever had a Book of Mormon in Japanese. So, yeah.
Now, while you're on your mission, you did meet with a very interesting investigator that taught you the plan of salvation.
Yes, we did. Yes. Well, I was in Sendai at the time, and this was in the late spring of 1957. I was a companion to Ira Ralph Telford, and he was ready to go home about a month to go. We kind of decided to go a little outside of the attracting area where we've been before, and we got on a bus and zigzagged up a hill for a long ways until we finally come up pretty much to the crest of the hill, and got off the bus, and we went and looked at a few houses and did what we normally do. But we come to this farmhouse with a thick thatched roof, timber structure, mud plastered walls and so forth, and we called out as we did all the time, "Guming Kurasai," which is to say, "I'm sorry," very impolitely, "but I'm at your front door." You don't knock on doors in Japan. That was very rude. So we called out, "Guming Kurasai," and we heard from the back of the house a voice come, and he says, "Dozo, dozo, oh hari kudasai, oh please come in," So we stepped into the genkan, the entryway, and he met us right there, and he said, "Please come in." So we took off our shoes and we went in and we sat down. The floors were highly polished with milk, dark color, but then there was a tatami area, and we went over and sat at the kotatsu. You put your feet down in the floor where there's a hibachi pot, and then there's a table and a blanket over the top, and it keeps you nice and warm. So we introduced ourselves, and he was a very cordial and interesting guy. So then we start out with our first meeting, and our first meeting was always the plan of salvation. The second plan was the Bible and Jesus Christ. The third one was the apostasy, and the fourth one was about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. So as we started in the plan of salvation, we told him about our Father in heaven, about God the Father and Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost being separate and so forth, and that we come to earth, we get a body, and we have experiences, and we live for a short time, and then we go onto the Spirit. At that point, he took over, and he taught us the things that we were there to teach him, and done it very well. And there's a particular picture hanging on the wall that showed that he knew the 3 degrees of glory, and he knew about Jesus Christ and who he was and so forth, So,
okay, and this is KHQN Radio, and we're interviewing LaDon D, VanNoy and Alan Richards of the Payson area, LaDon being from Arizona. We're talking about Christ's visit to Japan. Now, we're going to have a fireside on October Can't remember the exact date, but it will be conference weekend. We will get that word out very carefully here on the radio and in other promotions, but it will be that Sunday night on conference weekend at Rock Canyon Studios up near the Provo Temple. And LaDon, you did visit with him, and there was a group of what was known as Kakore Christen, which were hidden away Christians in Japan, which you'll tie in during that fireside. But eventually, he did tell you about the plan of salvation, which made you curious. Mm-hmm. But after your mission, you got on, you became a member of a very prestigious university there in, was it Tokyo?
In Japan? Tokyo, Ueno, yeah.
Yeah, and then you connected in this man and something else that you heard about. What was that?
Well, yeah, let me finish just one more thing. When we were there with this fellow, and he took over, we interrogated him completely, and he did not know anything about the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints. He didn't know any of that, and so left us in a big question as to how could he possibly know that. And I didn't find the answer to that for two years later. So I had studying architecture. Of course, I'm looking at Japanese temples and so forth, and then got into Shinto and some marvelous things. And I'm going to show that and how that actually the basic culture of Japan came from Judaism. And there are hundreds of things that talk about that. Anyway, what Jonathan just mentioned, yes, Brother Watabe back at the mission home, he had, we had talked about this very curious thing that Christ had visited Japan. So we set up, and I was able to talk to people that I knew, particularly Brother Darrell Longzine was in the English branch of the church, was in the Air Force, and he had a car, and he volunteered to drive us to this village where we could meet with these people that made this claim of Christ visiting Japan. And the things that we found are just marvelous and interesting, and that's really what I want to tell about. Jonathan, where do you want me to go after that?
Well, didn't you get to see the records?
Say that again.
Didn't you get to see the records?
Yes, I did, and that's what I'll tell about.
Or records?
Yeah. So just
the Christ visit.
Yes.
Japan.
Yes.
So without giving us the details, tell us a little bit about the trip that you went on.
Well, it was a long trip. You know, it was a long ride, and we got there and to this village, and Brother Watabe got out and went up through the village and finally found somebody that could talk to us or would talk to us about these things, you know, and come back to the car and got us, and we went up to the a little house which had been used for meetings and so forth, you know, and so we had a good meeting with them. Now, I probably should say, just because we're talking on the radio, history of Japan, there was a time when the Catholic Church particularly was introduced into Japan, and particularly in Fukuoka or down in that area, and they pretty much got so powerful that they tried to take over the government and other such things as that, and it resulted in a revolution of such that eventually there was over 200,000 people, as I remember reading, that were killed, and Christianity was banned from Japan forever. So all of anybody that believed in Christianity had to hide and themselves away. And this little group that I just talked about was also part of those that they couldn't talk about it for many, many years. So when this article come out in the paper, they were finally feeling free enough that they could talk about Jesus Christ, and that has led to a marvelous experience that I want to get out. And I'm the last survivor of the group, and I think it's something I need to tell, and it's something I have not talked about for 53 years, and there's a reason for that. And I feel it is a time that I can talk about it, and so I really should get it out and talk about it.
This is KHQN Radio, coming to you live from Provo's Rock Canyon studio. And we're broadcasting this morning a very special event that will take place on October 6th at 6:30 p.m. at the Rock Canyon studio. If you want to join us live, or you can join us on YouTube, which will be broadcast worldwide, and or the internet on the audio at utahtalkradio.com. That will be October 6th at 6:30 p.m. That's conference weekend, where we'll have very special guests with us, LaDon D, VanNoy, Alan Richards, and we'll tie him in here in a minute. And we hope to at least have a video interview of a man named Cloud Piler. Also, Professor Watabe's father will be introduced into this, and some of the other players. But LaDon VanNoy is the last surviving missionary to have witnessed the information that was given out at that time in 1959, that many missionaries of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints into the Japan area had heard about. And when I was a missionary in 1978 to 1980, I had heard about these legendary missionaries, and I'm now privileged to know one of them, at least the last survivor. And it's interesting that when you go to that place, that village, and LaDon's going to tell us why in his fireside, but we got there, and the architecture was very different than the architecture around Japan, because for one thing, the doorways were taller, and also the Star of David was used a lot, which is unusual in Japan. And when you got there to this roadside attraction where Jesus Christ had visited, there were two large mounds that he'll tell us about in the fireside. These two large mounds had a giant crucifixes on top made of lumber, and around these crucifixes were people at Matsuri time, or festival time, that would dance around in silk dresses to celebrate the coming of Jesus to their village, to live there throughout the rest of his life, because he had escaped crucifixion and substituted his brother into his place, and that he had come to Japan to learn the ways of Buddha and to disseminate or to live the rest of his life there. Now, as a missionary, when I get there, I see something very, very different than what LaDon VanNoy had discovered and had heard about. It's extremely different. And so we went away with our heads scratching and wondering, why would the missionaries have even had such a claim that Christ had visited Japan, when these two mounds contain supposedly the body of Jesus, and two, the body of his brother. Now, LaDon's not going to tell us exactly what his story was, but I'll use that as a teaser. It actually wasn't that at all, and there's a very clear and interesting explanation of that. So after you got done with your visit, a very sacred visit with this man that you visited with there at the site, you went back filled with joy. Is that right?
Well, filled with a lot of, well, yes, joy, I would say that, because to me, more of a testimony, that I know that Jesus Christ lives, and I know that he visited many places, and much more than we have just in the records of the Book of Mormon. And there will be a time, and I'm going to bring that out, that there will be a time when these records will come out. Will they all be translated like the Book of Mormon was with the Urim and Thummim? Possibly not, possibly so. But he had commanded that all that people east and west and in the islands of the sea to write the things when he had visited it. Did they record it well? Did they use it? But these records will come forth, and the one that I'm going to tell you about, I'm sure, is massive. It's fantastic. It's a lot of records, and it will come forth someday.
Now, can we have Brother Alan Richards now come in and give us some information that he has? Then we're going to have LaDon tie the two together. There is a tie between Brother Alan Richards and LaDon's own personal experience. Brother Alan, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think I could just say that the tie is in our records, the Savior came to our people as well. And but I'll tell you a little bit about what happened with us. Our records, most people don't know this, but the Native Americans have a lot of records. Before the white men came, the Lord told them to hide them up, and the record keepers have been keeping them safe, and they've been passing down from generation to generation. Most people are familiar with the Book of Mormon, how it was passed down all the way down to Moroni, and then he was the last Nephiite and last record keeper of that record. But the particular records that we've been involved with, where our family records are kept, these have been passed down since Hagoff, and the record keeper is alive today. During the 1800s, when the natives were placed in the reservations, the stewardship went down to the mine Nahopi, and about 5 years ago, it was transferred back up here to North America. But I think the important thing that LaDon is trying to point out is that the Savior did visit all over. In our particular records, the great grandson of Hagoff recorded the Savior's visit out here in the mountains, and Samuel Lamanite recorded it when he visited his people up in the great northeast Americas. And but there's a lot more information than that. But it's really quite fascinating.
Now, Brother Richards, are you a Native American yourself?
I was actually adopted in, and so I'm Native American by adoption. But these are my family records.
And so, when you're talking about them, they're sacred to you.
Yeah, they are sacred records. The Lord went to our record keepers in 1959 and instructed them to release these, and they finally started releasing them about 10 years ago.
So, did you say 1959?
Yeah.
So that was the same year that Brother VanNoy went to the village.
I believe it was that year. I might be wrong on the date, but if you get to talk to Clapper, he could probably correct me on that. But they've been working on them, and now they're being released.
Now, were you one of the translators of that record?
No, I'm not. I did know two of them personally, and two came to visit me, and I missed them by just a few minutes. No, I was actually asked to be the first publisher of the records. And I did that for about 8 years, and about a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was it was transferred to someone else in Missouri to transfer.
Now, there's no connection between Utah area and Moroni, right? Because Moroni fought the last battle of the Book of Mormon right at the base of what we call the Hill Cumorah in New York, where Joseph had the records. I mean, there couldn't be any connection at all to Moroni and Utah.
There's actually a huge connection there.
Yes, there is.
The Nephite land consisted of the Gulf regions of North America and down the Central South America. And when the battles occurred, they came up through the land desolation, across the Gulf regions, and up the East Coast. But Moroni's sons, Moroni was actually from a town called Wichita, which is probably around where Wichita, Kansas is from. He's actually not Nephite by birth, but he's from our nation. But he went down there. There was actually a committee of 12 men that was sent down. Two of them, Mormon and his father, Mormon, were sent down, but there was actually 10 others that were sent down to keep an eye on what was going on down there, because they knew that the battles would come up here into North America. And then eventually Moroni went down and joined his dad. But after the Great War, he came and he actually lived out here in the mountains. In fact, in our records, it talks about his brother being from the city of Mantina, which we know today is where Manti is today. And that's where the Savior actually visited our people here in the mountains. And my guess is that's why he came out here, is because his brother lived out here.
Didn't know that.
So he came to the mountains of Utah?
He sure did. And if you remember the history of the temple of in Manti, the land was actually dedicated by Moroni.
Now, how do we know that?
LDS history.
LDS history. So
LDS history gets in there.
wouldn't you have to have a prophet say something about that? Wouldn't there have to be some tie-in if you say LDS history?
Well, I'm not a scholar of LDS history. I just know that it's been well known that Moroni dedicated the land of the Manti temple.
There's a plaque in the temple, I'm told, and whether it's on a painting or where it is, but there is a plaque in the temple that says that Moroni had dedicated the land where the Manti temple was built.
I believe there's also one outside where with a statue of Moroni or something of that nature.
Yes.
Someone else that can probably give a little bit more detail, but yeah, there's the information there.
Oh, so there's a.
But Moroni spent a lot of time on that mountain because he was the high priest of Mantina, and that on the north side of that hill is where our high place was at, our Native American high place.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually 7 lodges that went up that, and it was our temple, and he spent a good amount of time there.
So what you're saying is that there was a temple there before the Manti temple?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was a Mantina temple. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. And are you saying that Moroni himself dedicated the first Mantina temple?
No. That was built in the days of Hagoth.
And
Hagoth Sr.
when did Hagoth live on the earth, according to the Book of Mormon?
Let's remember the Book of Mormon days. That was about 65 BC, somewhere on there.
Okay, and so
that's where Captain Moroni with the title Liberty, and Mormon, title Liberty. That time period, that's when he lived.
Mm-hmm.
And his father and Moroni were close friends.
So Hagoth, was he a native of the Manti area?
No. Hagoth from the land southward. He's Nephite. He's the one that built the ships went north.
Yeah.
But he's from down there.
Yeah, it'd be down where the Gulf of California.
So how does Hagoth and Mantina tie together?
Very simply, when he decided to come up the land northward, after he discovered that his son, when he came to land northward, he first settled in the Four Corners area, and they were there for a time. And if you remember in the Book of Mormon, how Nephi, the father of Nephi, would come up the land northward and then he'd come back down, back and forth. It's really kind of neat because he pops into our records when he comes north, and he pops back down the Book of Mormon records at that time when he goes down south. But there was a time when they realized they couldn't compete with the Gadiantans any longer, and they split into 2 main groups. The largest one went out to the plains area and lived off of buffalo, and the smaller group followed Hagoth up here into the mountains, Hagoth and his son Hickmany.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consider the Book of Mormon as, are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I am not, no.
But
I do know the Book of Mormon is authentic, and I know it's real, and I'm very supportive of what's going on. And what LaDon is saying is absolutely correct. The Lord did go all over the world. In our records, they actually talked about 5 other places where he went, and Asia is one of those. And so it's kind of cool to hear from LaDon his story.
Oh, yes, very interesting indeed. And so how do you connect? This is KHQN Radio, originating from Provo Rock Canyon Studio. Our transmitter is at Spanish Fork, Salem. We are KHQN 1480 AM Radio TV. We're on a special broadcast this morning with LaDon D, VanNoy and Alan Richards of the Payson area. Alan Richards, you're a member of what tribe again?
I'm not a member of the tribe. I'm a member of the Nemenha band. The band.
Nemenha. Nemenha is a word that they used like we use Mormon.
Is Nemenha, is that a religion?
No, no.
The Nemenha was the name of the nation that Hagoff established, and our band. We were first called the Nemiputu Peli Chupunish, but the Nez Perce called themselves Nemipu as well, and so they asked us if we wouldn't mind changing our name. And by that time, our records were being released, and we wanted to be named after our ancestors, so we took on the name Nemenha.
Now, you mentioned the Nez Perce. Are they related to what you're doing?
Yes.
The family line of Cloud Piler goes through Chief Joseph. He is a direct descendant of Chief Joseph.
And was Chief Joseph in any way associated with the LDS church?
I am not aware of that. Do you know that answer, LaDon?
I don't really. However, when they tried to put the Indians on the reservations, there was a great many of the Native Americans that joined the church, particularly around Blackfoot, Idaho. The whole tribe joined the church, to help retain their place, whereas the Nez Perce, of course, got chased clear up into Canada. So a very wonderful man, Chief Joseph, I understand, and tried to do everything fair, but they really ended up destroying him.
And this descendant of Chief Joseph, his name's Cloud Piler. He had preserved a record that you had published. Is that right, Mr. Richards?
He's one of the translators. He was invited to be on the translating council. I'm not sure exactly how long ago it was, but
go ahead.
The record keepers are actually. He's not one of the record keepers. He was just invited to be part of the translating council. So he is one of the translators. But there's 5 on the council that I know that are recorded in the records. But I think that answers your question.
Well, had they had preserved, was it delivered by an angel to be translated, or had they preserved it since the beginning?
They preserved it from the beginning.
From the beginning.
The Native Americans have huge libraries. Each family was responsible for their own records and to bring those records into the libraries. Most people are familiar with the Hill Cumorah, for example. That's one of their libraries, and it's chock full of records. In fact, in Samuel's day, when he was alive, he was in charge of that particular library. But there are many other libraries out there, and they've just been being preserved just like the Lord said he would. He preserved the records, and eventually he's going to bring the records out, and we're just seeing it happen. We're in that day.
So, do members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, do they generally know about these records coming forward?
Most of the time not, because they're just looking for records coming from the church, and these obviously is not coming from the LDS church, just like LaDon's stuff is not coming from the LDS church, but the records are there, and the record keepers that preserve those records, they're waiting to be instructed and do what the Lord's asked them to do.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that we'll see his records as well, but most people don't know anything about it because they don't see that, they don't think anything will come out other than through the LDS church.
Yeah.
So in that way, they might be maybe blind to the idea that some of this is already happening. Is that going to be a problem, do you think, in the future?
I think eventually, after plenty of people get confirmations of the Holy Ghost of the different records, eventually that mindset I think will dissipate. But I don't know. I don't know what the future will be.
So could you tell us a little bit about the Mantina record that you published? What would you say is a summary of that?
The summary of it is it's their sacred records that they kept from generation to generation, passed it down. It has their genealogies. It has all kinds of things in it. They knew a lot of the things that the LDS know. For example, they knew about the three Nephites. Three Nephites weave in and out of their records. There's a lot of teachings from them. The Savior came, obviously, I told you about those two visits. But basically, it's them preserving their heritage and their beliefs and the things the Lord taught them. This is you've seen with the Book of Mormon, the Bible, and many other records that have been put out through the years.
Is it, how did they translate this record? Was it because they had preserved the original language?
A lot of that was that way originally, but the Lord was one that commanded it to be done, and so He's provided a way for them to do it, and they've been able to translate. All the different translators have translated the records, and then they compare their translations to release it.
Oh, very interesting. And you say there were 5 members of this council?
Yeah, there's 5 members of the translating council. They're all direct descendants of Hagar.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, you said something about the 3 Nephites, and we're all familiar with the 3 Nephites. You know, we talk about them all, but very few people seem to know who they really were. It's Nephi, Mathoni, and Timothy. And there's so many good teachings that were given to us by Timothy in the Mantina archives.
Now, so what you're saying in Mantina, the archive, Timothy's teachings are there.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Correct, yes.
What would you say is his main message?
They've actually changed the name of the records because Mantina was actually the city, and they were talking about the city archives, and that wasn't really correct. They renamed it the Sacred Records of the Nemenhah because that was more accurate description of what we're dealing with here.
Where again was Mantina?
Mantina is today, and the way we know that is there was a prophecy in our records that when the pioneers would take over that area, that they'd actually take the floor of our high place, which is the only part that was made out of stone, and they'd use it in the walls of their homes, and that's where it happened, is right there in Manti. So in the old homes there, you can see parts of the floor of our temple.
So the name of Manti actually came directly from Mantina.
I'm not sure. Mantina means salt, and it was named salt because of the salt in the south end of the area there.
Mm-hmm.
Where you red means salt and all that stuff. That's where it came from. It means salt. That's what it means. Manti is also another name. The son of Ogo, which would be the great-great-great-grandson of Hagar, was also named Manti. So I'm not really sure where the name comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that the 3 Nephites resided with the Nemenhah? Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
No, that's actually not correct. They worked under the direction of John the Beloved, and each of them had a section of the world that they were in charge of, whatever it is the Lord was having them do. And Timothy was the one that was in charge of North America, and that's why he's kind of known a little bit more here in our records more than the other ones, is because he had a stewardship here that the Lord had given him.
Now
He didn't reside with our people. He would visit, but that would be the end of it.
It is unique to the LDS church that I know of. Maybe the Nemenhah knew a lot more about it, but it is part of our history to know that John the Beloved was translated. Other Christians certainly do not share that belief as we do, and so it had to come from somewhere, didn't it?
The Nemenhah knew that.
And the Nemenhah would have recorded that. And as I understand it, Brigham Young was the revealer of many of these things, especially about Moroni and Manti and so on, where in Joseph Smith was not ever here physically to even experience some of these things that Brigham Young did.
Yeah.
From my understanding, that is correct. And the reason why the men know about John the Blood is because the Savior told them.
Yeah.
When he visited here.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
So
what you're going to say?
it sounds like the Savior can do things outside the LDS Church, and it's just fine.
Correct.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The thing is that what people don't understand is the Lord promised to restore many things, and yes, the commencement of the restoration, which the LDS have, and that is absolutely true. They have the commencement of the restoration. That's only one of the things the Lord promised to restore. He promised to restore the Jews from Jerusalem, but one of the things that he promised our people that he would restore our people, and that's the reason our records are coming out, is the Lord's is restoring our people.
Yeah, restoring the gospel and our people. Yeah.
Do you have a feeling or a summary of what the North American presiding Nephite, Timothy, what did he tell your people? What did he write about in the records?
LaDon, do you remember?
Well, he talked about Jesus Christ all the time, and living the gospel, and living it, as the Book of Mormon has told us, and in many ways has told us how to communicate with the Lord. There's some writings that are just fantastic if you would just do what he said. You might even have the opportunity to see the face of the Lord. It was very good.
Yeah, one of the biggest teachings he did was he spent a lot of time teaching about the temple and what the temple is all about, and the ordinances.
Yeah, that's true.
And that sort of thing.
Do the Nemenhah people have a temple?
No, we don't.
No. Are there any Nemenhah that are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yes, there are. There are many.
I would say most of them are. Most of them are.
No, that's not correct. Most of them are not.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
There are those who are.
Yeah.
But the Nemenhah basically, as far as a people, is a healing band, and it's based on healing, and that's what the whole thing's been all about from the beginning. But when the records came out, we adopted the records into because of its obvious connection of our right to be able to be a people.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the people are not LDS, no.
But it is a compatible belief system.
I'm sorry?
It is compatible enough that you could be a member of both.
Oh yeah, because it's a healing band. It's if you have one of the platforms of your own personal beliefs is healing, then you're allowed to be part of the Nemenhah.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no doctrinal thing that people have to believe, that sort of thing. That's not among the LDS, just doctrines and that sort of thing. But among the Nemenhah, it doesn't matter what people believe as long as their beliefs is healing, then they can be accepted into the band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
very different. It's a Native American view of religion, not white man view of religion.
This is KHQN Radio, 1480 AM. We're originating from Provo, Utah, Rock Canyon Studios, where we're speaking with LaDon D, VanNoy and Alan Richards. We're talking about a very special fireside coming up on October 6th at 6:30 p.m. That would be coincidental to the Feast of Tabernacles festival by the Jews, and other very interesting things. Of course, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has their conference that day. This is a good thing to bring your family to after conference, and to come and listen to the very interesting story about Christ's visit to Japan. This is LaDon's very special event in his life that happened in 1959 after he completed his mission in the Northern Far East Mission under President Andrus. He has a very compelling thing to tell you about and why he believes that Christ did visit there. Now, interestingly, through the miracle of networking and economies and so on, the ancestors of the Nez Perce Indians that we call them, and they call themselves now the Nemenha people, and Hagoth that we'll read about in the Book of Mormon. There is a connection to, sounds like the Plains area, Wichita, and Utah, and also this strange story that we have about Moroni dedicating the temple at Manti. And what Brother Richards tells us is that that Manti temple was actually part of an older temple, much older temple, that has a connection to Hagoth and Moroni. And that's what we're talking about this morning, is this run up to this. So I don't want to give too many more details, but you also mentioned this Timothy character that is the name of one of the three Nephites. Now, in the Book of Mormon, I believe that the Lord withheld their names. Is that right,
Yes, he
LaDon?
did.
Yeah, it's just known as the three Nephites, that's all.
And actually, maybe the editor, Moroni, edited out their names so that they wouldn't be more persecuted or something like that. Do you know any more about the three Nephites that you can share with us, Brother Richards?
I remember the last time they visited was the high priest in the Mississippi Valley. You remember Hagoth, when he came up here, the whole area was actually populated. He wasn't by himself, and then it spread all over. And our family went into the Mississippi Valley eventually, and Timothy came and the pipe ceremony with the high priest, and then gave her instructions to that if they wanted to survive, because the white men were coming, if they wanted to survive a couple more generations, then they would need to move up the river, and he also instructed them from then on that they need to do Unipi, which is the peace pipe ceremony, and so that actually came from Timothy, which is kind of fascinating, I think.
Well, it is. Very. Now, was Timothy? If you're one of the three Nephites, I guess Timothy was dead by then.
No, Timothy was one of the three Nephites. They were actually blood brothers. All three of the Nephites. They were the sons of Nephi. His boys, Timothy, Lehi, and which is Moroni, and
is that Nephi, the son of Nephi?
Yeah, he was one of the three Nephites.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and realize that they all three of them were translated. They had the opportunity. The Lord asked them what they wanted to do, and and the others said that they wanted to go and be with the Lord in heaven. But the three Nephites said, no, we'd like to stay and do the work. So they were translated and given the opportunity. And so we hear stories about the Nephites from time to time. They are still here.
So what is the nature of translation, LaDon? What is that?
Well, I wish I really knew. But to be translated, you are, you're just pretty much the same, except that you live on, and you're not susceptible to all of the diseases and problems and everything else that we have. Do they have blood? Well, I know that when we're resurrected, it is spirit and
Spirit and body.
and body.
Yeah.
So what it is with the three Nephites, translated is not
But
resurrected.
it doesn't mean dead.
Not dead.
You will
Right.
not die. Is that right?
That's correct.
So when we talk about the three Nephites, this is a common belief between the Nemenha and the LDS people. Is that right,
Correct.
Brother Richards?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, when I say Brother Richards, because of a nice friendly, not because he's of the culture of LDS. He says he's not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That some of the members of the Nemenha people are, but not necessarily, and that their main belief is healing. And where do they mostly reside now, Alan?
They're actually all over. A lot of them are in Missouri, but they're actually all over.
Yeah.
Basically, the band was originally started because there was such a push against natural healing and that sort of thing, but there was a legal way to have people be able to live according to their beliefs in that area through the legal things that have been put together by for the Native Americans. Yeah. And that's why a lot of people have become a part of it. But they're all over, and they're from, you can join as many churches you want to be able to practice your religious beliefs, and that's why a lot of people join. That's how I joined, was because I wanted to be able to practice my religious beliefs. Yeah.
Do the Nemenhah, when you join that group, are you taught about Timothy as part of your records?
People, they do mention it as they talk about the different things, but they don't really talk about Timothy. No, I mean, people can read our records. It's not like with the LDS where the Book of Mormon is the cornerstone that everything is based on that sort of thing. It's not like that at all. In fact, I think most people haven't even read it. They've only read excerpts, as it has to do with our legalities.
Well, the Mentina books volumes are really not available anymore because you're not able to really publish them, and that's really too bad. But
if people from this fireside want to read the record, Alan Richards, how will they get a copy of it?
They can get the first 2 volumes from the Nemenhah Press, but until they release more, that I don't think, I don't know how they're going to. Originally, they released about 1,000 pages, about 9 volumes of material, and because I was publisher at the time, I was able to have those where people could download them free off the internet. But it was not something that the chiefs wanted, and when the stewardship was changed to somebody else, that was the first thing they did, was they took them off the internet so that people couldn't get them. And this is very typical, among the Native Americans. They want to keep their stuff to themselves, and I don't blame them. But because these are sacred, and how many things that have the white men treated with respect, and certainly this has not been treated with respect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, have they?
Another group taken the records that have been spin-offs from the LDS Church and changed them and published them as their own, and this has been very offensive to our people.
Yeah. Did you say the first 2 volumes are still available?
They are available. The first volume is Hagoth, his son, grandson, and great-grandson. And the Samuel Lamite's grandfather on his mother's side wrote 2 books, and Samuel Lamite wrote 2 books, and that's the first volume. The second volume is actually our temple ceremony, our high place ceremony. And the one thing that a lot of people have a hard time with is our cultures are different. Among the LDS, you don't learn anything about the temple until you go in it. But among my people, we taught about everything about the temple, so when you made your covenants, you knew exactly what you're making. And I'm not saying one way's right or wrong. It's just that it is a cultural difference that a lot of people don't understand.
The writings of Timothy, what volume would they be in?
They would be recorded by different people through the years. Timothy did not write in our records, but 5, 6, 7, and on would have writings of Timothy, things that people have recorded that he taught them.
And if you're a diligent seeker of knowledge, would the Nemenhah people share any of that with you?
I will share it with anybody who wants to know. But I'm not allowed to give copies out anymore. But I suspect that the day will come that all of them be available again. Originally, when they made the translations, when they came across the known name, they actually used the known name. Like, for example, Jesus Christ, they put Jesus Christ, but we didn't know him as Jesus Christ. We knew him as Yahshua Saint Hempent. And so
could you repeat that?
Well, we knew the Savior as Yahshua Saint Hempent.
Okay.
In fact, St. Pete Valley was named after Christ. It's supposed to be San Hempent Valley, not San Pete Valley. It's just mistranslations of the pioneers used.
So San Hempent means Christ.
It means Christ, yes.
Oh, very wonderful.
And anyway, and that's one of the things with them bringing it back in, they're actually fixing all the names. So, for example, Hagoth. Originally, when they came, they wrote Hagoth, but now they're going back and they're trying to get the correct pronunciation. And there's a lot of H's and things like that in the names. But if you look close enough, you can tell what they are. I've through the years, I've been writing a reference book, and I'm happy to give that to anybody who wants it. But it's just an electronic copy, that is. But in there, you can actually look up the different names. Like if you look up Moroni, they'll tell you what his name was among my people, which was Mohoniah. And then it gives us genealogy, who he married, who his kids are, that sort of thing, and then what he was known for, and the references in our records where you can find the information about him.
So he wasn't alone at the end, it sounds like.
No, he thought he was alone because LaDon, I don't want to step on your toes. Do you want me to keep talking, or?
Yeah.
No,
go ahead.
We haven't got much time left, but yeah, please tell us.
Well, what happened was the high priest of Montina was called to a grand council in Wichita. The high priest was actually Moroni's nephew, and he encouraged them to build battlements and get an army pulled together and everything else, because they knew that the Nephites were coming up here, and they did that for about 40 years, but just about destroyed their nation. And when he realized the mistake he made, he resigned as the high priest, spent the rest of his days telling people to pull them down and dismantle and go back to the way they were living. And then he told them that to do one thing is that keep an eye on where the army is coming and stay out of the way, and that's what they did. And so when the armies came up here, Moroni and Mormon thought that it was empty because they never came across people, and they thought that there was no people out there anymore. Even though they come up to areas where they knew there was people, it wasn't there. So it's really easy to understand when Moroni, thought that he was alone, but he wasn't alone. They just were very careful to stay away from the armies, because the armies were so concerned about killing each other, they went to scout the land about to find out that there was other people there. If that makes any sense.
And so
they got away.
This record of Moroni's after Book of Mormon, post Book of Mormon life is in your records. Is that right?
Yeah, Moroni wrote a book. His son wrote a book, and it just keeps on going down the family line.
Yeah.
It was part of the family.
So the Nez Perce people then descend from Hagoth. Therefore, they also, some of them descend from Moroni.
Actually, it's not just Nez Perce. It's basically all the Indian nations. I mean, they all intermix and everything else. We can't just point out one tribe. It doesn't work that way.
I see.
I mean, my family line actually goes through the Nez Perce, but that doesn't mean that's just because our family line goes through it. But just about every Indian nation would have claims of being descendants of Hagoth and Samuel. What is very interesting about Hagoth and Samuel is we know that they are both Levites, and that's just that's a whole other topic. But anyway, it's kind of very, very interesting what's going on.
So the Paiute Indians and the Ute Indians that were in this area of Utah would be related.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're coming up to the end of our broadcast today. A very special broadcast with LaDon D, VanNoy and Alan Richards. Well, thank you very much. We are going to have a special fireside that will come along on October 6th at 6:30 p.m. right here at Rock Canyon Studios, and we want you to be there if at all possible, and to bring your family. The Rock Canyon Studios is up by the Provo Temple, and we're going to be talking about Christ in Japan. Actually, an eyewitness of that is LaDon D. VanNoy. A very special witness of the Nemenhah people is Alan Richards, and we hope to also have Cloud Pilot with us at least maybe in an interview that he can give to us. By video. He's out in the Plains area, maybe Missouri or Nebraska or something, and that's how we'll do this. So let's see, are we coming right up to the end of this? I think we are. Any parting words, Alan?
I want to hear LaDon. I'm fascinated by his stuff.
Well, I'm fascinated by you, Alan. You know all this stuff so well, and I haven't really concentrated on it that much, But one thing that we were kind of wondering about, talking about is Moroni, you know, and he got the plates of ether from the old ones, and they then delivered them to Cumorah with the Urim and Thummim, and I thought that was an important point.
KHQN.
Very good, Alan. Appreciate it very much.
Hope that was useful for you.
Very good. Very, very good. Yeah.
All right. Anything else I can do for you?
No, just